Did the Saints trade for Keon Coleman? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're jumping in here. I want to get ahead of this. So there's some serious weird stuff happening in Buffalo around Keon Coleman, Brandon Beane, the entire organization. It's been a disaster today. They did a press conference, Brandon Beane and Pagula, and they basically said, well, Beane got promoted, first of all, which is insane. I said on Twitter when Sean McDermott got fired, I said, I'm not surprised that McDermott got fired, but I am surprised that Beane didn't get fired. And then he got promoted. Okay, so in this press conference, I think people were kind of asking, like, why the hell is Brandon Beane getting promoted? And Pagula comes out and says, look, Keon Coleman was not Beane's decision. He was just being a team player, blah, blah, blah. And Keon Coleman's on the roster. Like, Keon Coleman is a member of the Buffalo Bills, and the ownership and the front office is saying, yeah, I know that guy sucks, and I know he was a complete bust, but let's not put that on the GM. All right, so today, everyone's like, well, damn, I guess Keon Coleman's out of Buffalo, right? I guess he's gone. So what always happens whenever someone gets released or cut or whatever is I start seeing, should the Saints trade for, should the Saints sign, whoever. And I actually thought I would get this video out before those videos were made, but a couple of trickled on out, so we're going to react to that. My boy Trizzy Trace in the backdrop. All right, so real quick, Brandon Beane is a clown. Buffalo is doing Josh Allen a disservice. Since Josh Allen arrived in Buffalo, trivia, Josh Allen College, this is an easy one, Wyoming. Trivia, where in Wyoming do they play football? Laramie? Come on, guys. Easy peasy. Since Josh Allen was drafted, Beane has made 56 picks. Only 2 of the 56 have been Pro Bowlers. Trivia, who are they? James Cook and Dawson Knox. All right. So he has completely wasted Josh Allen. Keon Coleman, we'll get to that, but there's no doubt about it. The front office is doing a horrible job getting any help for Josh Allen. Why didn't they go get Jalen Waddle? Why didn't they go get someone at this year's trade deadline? Make a push. Instead, they said, yeah, we'll win with Shakir and Keon Coleman and who the hell ever else.
There is trouble in Buffalo, so we're going to be talking about some NFL trade rumors that the Saints could get involved in around wide receiver Keon Coleman, the
Trivia, Keon Coleman, college. Easy. Again, come on, guys. Florida State.
Louisiana native. He could get dealt this offseason. You're watching Saints Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Trizzy Trace Gerard. And why are we talking about this in the first place? Well, because there are problems in the Buffalo Bills organization. Obviously, there's been a lot of changes to that organization since they got eliminated from the playoffs. But Terry Pagula, he just pinned the wide receiver Keon Coleman pick on the coaching staff, said Brandon Beane was being a team player and that Coleman wasn't on top of Beane's list. So basically just threw Keon Coleman under the bus and was like, yeah, we didn't really want him anyway.
For no reason, really. Like, I'm not saying Keon Coleman's been great, but after a disappointing loss and all that, to then just be like, don't worry, guys, Keon Coleman sucks. It's like, man, that is not the problem. Keon Coleman is not the reason that Buffalo keeps ending the season in a disappointing fashion.
They're just trying to, make everyone happy, yada, yada, yada. But, this is kind of an interesting conversation, not only because of this, but because of the fact that Sean McDermott was also fired earlier this week. So for the New Orleans Saints, there's now an opportunity to potentially go and get a wide receiver that a team already doesn't really like having around right now anyway, and bringing him to New Orleans and bringing him home. So how interested are you in a Keon Coleman trade scale?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Trace, because I'm going to answer. Not much. If Buffalo was dealing him for like a 6th round pick or a 7th or whatever, okay, sure. Beyond that, I wouldn't get involved. Now, Keon Coleman is a name that I think people know because he was drafted recently, played at Florida State, was a good player. He was in draft discussions here. He was part of the Florida State team with Jared Verse, and we were talking about Keon Coleman and Jared Verse when we were talking about the draft prep. Let's take a look real quick at some numbers. Now, before we look at the numbers, I want in the comment section I want you to say before numbers, after numbers. And I want you to write your answer. Before numbers, would you trade for Keon Coleman? All right. Among players who played 400 plus snaps in 2024, Keon Coleman was third highest in drop rate at 8.7%. Keon Coleman ranks sixth worst of 115 qualifying wide receivers in separation. He's also been missing and showing up late to meetings for weeks. Okay. All right. Interesting. Steve Smith, some harsh criticism here. He ain't the guy. Can't get separation. Can't get off the jam. Doesn't have it. You can't teach a dog how to bark. You either got it or you don't. There you go. And then Joe Marino. Among the 92 NFL wide receivers to run at least 100 routes, Keon Coleman ranks 86th in separation score, 70th in route win percentage, 9th highest in negative separation routes. Those are some tough numbers. All right, by the way, Keon Coleman, big guy. Okay, I think he's somewhere around 6'4". But he did run a 4.6, which, whatever. You're 6'4", so a little slower. Maybe that has something to do with the separation. I don't know. There's a lot to separation. It's not just how fast you are. But these numbers ain't good. All right. And at 8.7, the third highest drop rate at 8.7%, sixth worst in 115 qualifying quarterbacks for separation, 86th in separation score, 70th in route win percentage, 9th highest in negative separating routes. When you read stuff like that, the question is, why would you trade for this guy? Why would you give up draft capital? Why wouldn't you just draft a wide receiver? Right? If you're going to trade a 4th round pick, a 5th round pick, a 6th round pick, why don't you just use those picks to draft somebody who you think can maybe be better than this? So now I want you to write, after seeing those numbers, would you trade for Keon Coleman? And I would assume the answer is no. I would assume a majority of the answer is no, right? So big name, interesting name. We remember him as a player in college, but I just want you to remember whenever this kind of stuff happens, and it happens all the time. Player gets cut, released, whatever. Saints get thrown around in trade talk. Just do a little bit of digging. Do a little bit of digging and see exactly what the player's been doing. Because when I saw all the hullabaloo, shout out Tulane, when I saw all the hullabaloo about Keon Coleman, I was like, man, Coleman, I don't feel like he's done very much. I feel like he's always kind of in the negative press. So I went and did a little bit of digging, and this is some of the stuff I found, and some of this stuff is pretty damning. Pretty damning indeed.
For me, Saints fans, 1 to 100. 1 means you're not interested
100?
really at all. 100 meaning you
what is
need it like you need oxygen.
Mean?
I
what
think that Keon Coleman could be a pretty interesting addition to the wide receiver room. He definitely could bring some size to that department, but I want to hear from you because we're going to break it on down here on Saints Now. So Keon Coleman, in case you guys forgot, he is actually from the Louisiana. He is a former second-round pick, 33rd overall, basically an extension of the first round. In 2024, he was disappointing in Buffalo since being drafted out of Florida State. And one of the things that I remember talking about in the draft, pre-draft process was Keon Coleman and how I think that he would be a pretty good fit for the New Orleans Saints offense. And now even more so, I think that could be pretty interesting for the black and gold. But why this is also interesting is he was disciplined by the team in November. Buffalo actually made him a healthy scratch for 4 games.
Yeah, so we know now why. Right? Because he was missing meetings or whatever that guy was saying, and that's why they disciplined him.
Is why he was only available for 13 contests this season, but he did put up some okay numbers. It isn't really anything to run home about, and it honestly isn't worth the 33rd overall pick. That being said, I think when it comes to Keon Coleman, maybe a change of scenery could be beneficial. And Keon Coleman is a player, like I said, that provides some size. He provides some extra dynamic in the wide receiver department. And on top of that, he is a player that did catch a touchdown in the playoff for the Buffalo Bills. So it's not like he's a terrible football player. I just think that he's in a situation that they didn't really want to in the first place, and they just kind of did it, and yada, 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 making everyone.
You land in these situations where the question becomes simple. The question becomes, if he's not a bad football player, why is he bad at playing football? Right? If he's not a bad wide receiver, why is he bad at separating? Why is he bad at catching the football? Why is he bad at showing up?
I think for Keon,
why is he bad at showing up to meetings? Right now, where I'm sitting, you got a guy who was disciplined by the team for not showing up to meetings on time or at all, with a high drop rate, who's horrible at separating. And the more I hear that, the more it's like, am I just trading for him because he's 6'4"? Surely. Don't call me Shirley. One of my favorite lines ever. Surely you can find a 6'4" receiver in the draft if that's all you really want. All right. So I'm going to have to give this one a hard pass. I'm going to have to give this one a no thanks.
Coleman, there is a lot of untapped potential. And I think if you get to have an opportunity to bring him in, why not? I mean,
I'm on the middle of a damn boat. What's going on with these ads?
To be totally honest, it change of scenery, like I said, could be extremely beneficial for.
Maybe a change like wide receiver gloves or something. Again, 8.7% drop rate. 6th worst separation. Late to meetings. 86th in separation score. 70th in route win percentage. 9th highest in negative separation routes. This was from February 27th, 2025. This was in the 2024 year. This was from November 16th, 2025, so a couple of months ago. So this is from the 2025 season. This was from October 2025, aka the 2025 season. So 2024, 2025, 2025, all bad. All right. So
for Keon Coleman. And I don't think that he's a player that needs to get traded to the New Orleans Saints. Like, I don't think the Kellen Moore and Mickey Loomis need to be clamoring for this player and offering the king's fortune for this guy. But I do think when it comes to this player, there's a lot of upside and untapped potential that maybe Kellen Moore and Tyler Shuck could unlock. And I do think that he's somebody who could be complementary to the current offensive weapons. When you think about the landscape, you currently have Alvin Kamara as your lead back. You have Chris Olave, Devon Vele, you have Mason Tipton, you have a lot of guys in the mix that you could
the king of the universe, Jalen Polk,
potentially lean on. You also have Juwan Johnson, too, as a big-bodied pass catcher, but I think bringing in another guy in Keon Coleman, who's only 22 years old, by the way, could be a smart move. And he has untapped potential. He has upside. And coming up, I'm going to tell you whether or not I actually would trade for Keon Coleman, because I have a pretty good discussion topic around this. And plus, we're also going to talk about the future of the wide receiver department.
When are we doing that?
Did trade.
Here we go. Let's
for
go
the right
here.
price. I am not offering a day 2 pick. I'm honestly going to offer maybe a 6th or 7th round pick. And hell, I think Buffalo would take it just because they don't want to deal with him anymore. I think they just aren't happy with him in the current situation. I don't think that Keon Coleman would want to play in the current situation that he's in Buffalo. So for the right price, for like a 6th or 7th round pick, yeah, damn it, I had to do it. Sorry, Coop. It's one of those things that you maybe consider it for a right price. Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those low risk, high reward type moves, and it would be a homecoming, which could be kind of cool. And I know.
I mean, a 6th or a 7th, at that point, it's like, all right, whatever. I mean, you're a 7th, you're basically releasing the guy, I mean, you drafted him 33rd overall. So if Buffalo's willing to do it for a 7th, whatever, who cares? Sure, take a flyer on him. If it doesn't work out, release him in training camp, but anything above that world, the Saints have 8 picks this year, so a 6th or a 7th, whatever, again. But I think that's one of those things where Buffalo's like, yeah, we're not trading for a 6th or a 7th. So that's how I mean, when I hear about this trade or a potential trade for Keon Coleman, I don't even really in my mind think of a 6 or 7, because that's the kind of price where it's like every team should do it, right? I think the real discussion would be in that like 4th round territory, where it's like, well, he was drafted 33rd overall. You are getting a couple rounds of value. He is 22. Do you think you can find that potential? Whatever. And for a 4th, I would say absolutely no.
A lot of Saints fans, that means a little bit more, and it's a little extra sentimental. But there is something to consider. You may not need to go and get Keon Coleman.
I mean, Devon Vele is way better than Keon Coleman. Devon Vele is the opposite of Keon Coleman. Devon Vele has a low drop rate. He catches everything. Before he got hurt, he had the highest contested catch percentage rate in the NFL.
Because you actually might have your Keon Coleman at home in Devon Vele. The Saints may have their version of that big-bodied physical presence that Keon.
I feel like the big-bodied thing, outside of my guy Burley D's Google history, I feel like the big body thing is another one of those terms that just gets thrown around all the time, but it doesn't mean anything anymore. It's the same as like salary cap hell. It's the same as all that. It's like, Yeah, a year ago for sure, when we were rocking and roll with Brandon Cooks and Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, yeah, we needed a big body receiver. But now that we have Devon Vele and Juwan Johnson's kind of coming around, and we're getting into the draft, we don't need a big body receiver. If we add one in the draft or whatever, fine. But it's not as pressing of a need anymore because of Vele. Now it's just like, all right, you need other stuff now. I know we've been saying big bodied receiver for so long, but it's not like, it's not what it once was. I don't feel like those words have the same power that they once did.
Coleman could provide in Devon Vele. Now, I will say, I don't think there's anything wrong with having an extra player that could fulfill that role, because God forbid there's an injury, or God forbid you got to get off the field.
Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. Like now it's just kind of, you're getting depth at all these different roles. You're getting depth at your fast receivers, your small receivers, your big bodied receivers. You're just getting the room a little deeper. But even then, the room is kind of deep, right? Like we haven't even talked about Jalen Polk really in this video. I mean, I know I did, but so all of that just leads to and the locker room thing too, guys. Like you're talking about the locker room. The Saints have cultivated a really healthy locker room. Do you want to risk that with a guy who was disciplined, for a guy who in his first couple years in the NFL said, I ain't going to these meetings? Does that sound like a Kellen Moore guy to you?
Cleats or something. Your laces came undone, so you got to go and hop off the field to get a water break or something like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a lot of options, a lot of high-level options. And I do think Devon Vele this year will see an increased role for Kellen Moore's offense. We really saw his role emerge and expand after Tyler Shuck took over as the Saints quarterback. And before he suffered his injury that ended him up on IR, he was a player that was starting to stack some really, really good production for the black and gold. And right now, the wide receiver depth chart is as follows. This is the current scape in late January of the Saints depth chart. You have Devon Vele, Chris Olave, Mason Tipton.
All right, final answer, 6th or 7th, who cares, whatever, it is what it is. By the way, guys, new camera. Did y'all notice? I'll save this till the end to see if y'all noticed. Am I looking more crisp? This is a new camera, so we're slowly. I've got some upgrades in the studio I haven't got to do yet because of the season. I didn't want to, mess around with all the stuff while we were churning out 3, 4, 5 videos a day. But I had a little bit of downtime, so I switched out some of the cameras. So this is a brand spanking new camera. All hell broke loose. I don't know what happened, but how I record the videos, the driver crashed. So I meant to do this video at 6 p.m. It's 10 p.m. I'm still in the studio. I've deleted drivers. I've uninstalled drivers. I've restarted my computer 500 times. Finally, it got to work. So hopefully everything's cool. Hopefully the microphones are all set. The levels are all cool. Everything's all right. So we're rocking and rolling with this camera. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully I'll look more clear. I still got to figure out some of the stuff. I got to figure out some of the color and some of the whatever, but it's basically just right out of the box. But I think it looks pretty good from what I can see. So let me know in the comments below. But thank you for watching. Would you trade for Keon Coleman? I will see you in the next video. Peace.